So do I. So start inspecting grease fires. They're the #1 fire starter. So are we going to start checking everybody's grease fire at 6 o'clock, make sure it's turned off? What about those that bake at 11 o'clock? Are we going to put GPS systems on every grease machine? Or am I just being way out of left field? See, this is how backwards you sound, sir, when you make statements like this. And you really you go after us in a way that you continue to go on that says that everything that we do tends to result in a health and fire and safety hazard. I've been growing for 7 years, and I haven't been a hazard to anybody. I lived in a multi-dwelling setting. Now I live in a house. I've never been a threat to anybody. In fact, I've never heard of a single legal exemptee having a fire or having a threat to anybody. It's you, sir, that's a threat to people. You're a threat to the disabled. You're a threat to the sick because you have no ethical moral ground. You have only your ground. But you know what? I understand something. I understand funding. I understand there's not as many fires going on. Maybe not as many firebugs as there was in the 80s. So now you got yourselves a problem. So what better way to get a huge budget than to crack down on the marijuana grow-ops that apparently nobody could close? I got something to tell you, Mr. Fire Chief. It's called LED lighting. Okay? It leaves no heat signature and no hydro signature. So what you're going to do is have closet cultivators convert over to these lights, and then you're going to be untraceable. And you're back to square one. Then this is what you're going to be held to in open debate. So I hope you look up LED lighting. And look at where the technology is at. Because in another couple of years, I believe that the flowering spectrums that they'll be able to put out with these bulbs will be equal to the high-intensity discharge lamps you're so concerned about. Being the HID lamps in question. So, and then of course, you make all these. The fire chief here makes a lot of accusations of moisture. Now, I have a little over 200 segments up on the channel now. Okay, dealing with how to grow. We just did a show that we need one more part done on an enclosed grow room. We've we've talked about a lot of different things throughout the various shows to make sure that people understood how to avoid moisture in your home. Okay. Which is called dehumidifiers there, Mr. Police or Mr. Fire Chief. So you've got dehumidifiers, you've got air conditioning units, and you've got proper venting. And you're right. We can always circle back and say those darn medical users, they didn't know what they were doing. Well, should we be blaming the end user who went through a 32-page application, a doctor's signature, done everything by the letter of the law and by the federal government standards, and then you blame us? Who's really to blame, sir? Now, I've talked enough about that. Let's talk a little bit here about Bill C-15 and what Bill C-15 is going to mean. Bill C-15 is coming up for its final reading, as I understand it, on the 27th. Okay? I see a two-pronged approach here. Bill C-15 is certainly going to impede the supply lines, which I've talked about already, and I'm going to touch on that a little further. What I mean by that is there's a lot of people who are growing, who are just mom and pop growers. They live in their houses and they grow and they help out compassion clubs, or they help out community-based dispensaries in different cities and towns, or they help out medical users. Now, these are the people who are going to pack it in. They are not organized crime. They are not gang members. They're the people that are going to end up having to pack it in because they're not willing to face mandatory minimums that you're going to threaten them with. And who is going to move in is the very people you think you're going to get. Is going to be the gangs. And this is where you put medical users right in the crossfire of all of this. Whether we're storing dried marijuana in our house or whether we're growing it, we're still subject to being targeted. As you know, with the federal licensing scheme, we're allowed to store it off-site if we wish. We just have to write down the location. So there's different things that you need to look at when having two licenses. I would always suggest, if there are two licenses, that you split them up, put them into two locations until we find out what's going on. On that note, Bill C-15, that's hack one. Then we got this new proposal from the Privacy Committee, and then we got all this weird stuff going on in BC. Mr. Matt Lane, I wish you would get in touch with me because I would love to have a chat with you. I would love to be able to find out exactly what it is that is going on. Because you were in contact with me in Victoria briefly. I asked you to supply me with the paperwork that says that you distribute to medical users, and you didn't provide that to me. Apparently you didn't provide that to some friends of mine either. So, you know, what's even more ironic is that somebody else has claimed that you go by a different name. So, you know, the whole snooping around Victoria is a little bit concerning, to say the least. And some of the stuff recently throughout BC, from Mr. Emery right down to myself, 50% of my plants being cut in 2 different rooms, whatever. You know, could it be an actual police mistake? Maybe. Could it be something more? We don't know. That's why we have lawyers, I guess. But the one thing that I do know, I'm done ranting about this. I'm done talking about this. We are at the point now, we're just going to show you these plants real quick again because it's the last time you're going to see them till harvest. Okay, and you can see their early development. Again, what I tell people to wait for, when you see those white tips pointing up like that, you want to wait for those to drop. And it's like on this plant here, you got a milky tip, but they're not all dropped. So what's going to happen is this center cola here is just going to completely fill in. You can see that it's barely even top heavy, but with the carbo load that one thing that I also don't understand about what the fire chief is saying here is he really gets into the fact of exactly how we're allowed to get licensed, whether it's a DPL, a PPL, or whether we can order from the federal government. I'll reintegrate. The federal government's supply on marijuana has been ruled unconstitutional, and their monopoly anyway has been ruled unconstitutional. So the Phase 3 amendments, I fear what they're going to look like. I fear the Phase 3 amendments just may be Molson Cannabis, as I've talked about in other videos, finally moving in. And some people may think that that's good, but at the same time, I don't want another, exactly, a Molson Cannabis. I don't want another brewery that's just selling cannabis. Or some of these cigarette companies could come in and take over and start investing some of their billions of dollars into the cannabis trade. If it's going to put money back in, we got to look at what the U.S. is doing, people, and see what's going on. I don't know why Canada's taking the stance it's taking, but the U.S. is looking at some backward stances too. So all said, I'm getting a little medicated here. I'm going to continue to smoke my medication. There's really not a lot more to say on this. We'll see when the plants are going out. I'm certainly not going anywhere. The one thing that I can tell you is that this fight's far from over. I'll certainly update people when I can. My lawyers asked me to be quiet, so I'm going to do my best to keep my lips shut. That's not always easy for me, especially during times of engagement. All said, this is Jason Wilcox, and we're going to see you in the next segment, or next part, or in the next movie.